Hello and welcome to Boardgame TV. We're on our Ravenloft retrospect, part 3, and this is the era that I like to call Ravenloft in decline, but not decline as in decline in quality of products, but decline in the number of products. For instance, this right here stack, as you can see, is 4 years. You can take off the top 2 modules because that's the original Ravenloft modules, but 4 years. This right here is 3 years, and this right here, this little stack right here, is about 2.5 years right there. And honestly, not all products in this stack are Ravenloft products. I have included them in there and you'll see why. But they're not Ravenloft products. So it was around this time that TSR started feeling the woes of the money problems, and quite simply they had just been cranking out too many products. And I'm not talking about just Ravenloft products. I'm talking about all kinds of products, from board games to novels to Dungeons and Dragons stuff, to all kinds of different campaign settings, and they were just cranking too much stuff out and not enough of selling, because a lot of it really was hot garbage. Well, I won't say a lot of it. Some of it was hot garbage, and it was the economic boom of the 90s was fixing to come crashing down. This also happened to the comic book industry. So there was a decline in the number of products being put out. Now, the first product this era is Domains of Dread. As you can see, it's a big, nice hardback book. Night is falling, the mist is arising, embrace the darkness. Enter the dark and macabre world of Ravenloft, but beware, once you begin to walk among the mist and shadows, you can never leave. Domains of Dread is the core rulebook for the second edition of the award-winning Ravenloft campaign setting, the original fantasy horror role-playing game. Within the pages of this book, players and dungeon masters will discover the darkest secrets of the Land of the Mist, including many never seen before features. Detailed guidelines on designing anything from short-term horror adventures to running long campaigns of Twisted Terror. Complete rules for generating player characters native to the Demiplane of Dread. 4 new character classes specifically for use in the Ravenloft campaigns: the Avenger, the Anchorite, the Gypsy, and the Arcanist. An all-new player character race, the Havistanti. Updated expanded descriptions of the Demiplane and the Foul Lords who rule its tortured domains. Revised fear, horror, and madness checks to enhance the terror. New rules for power checks, plus 13 detailed steps that lead from grace to absolute corruption. Now, I remember seeing this book at my local bookstore when it came out, and honestly I was hesitant to buy it. And one of the reasons I was hesitant to buy it was the price tag on this thing. $30. Okay? And I thought, this is just another core book setting. It's basically the black box, the red box all over again, but not in a box set. Dungeons and Dragons have decided they don't do box sets anymore. That was another change that I guess it was cheap. It was less expensive for them to produce box sets. I love the box sets. That was another thing that really kind of got me around that time when TSR stopped doing box sets. I miss those things. But it's a nice hardback book, as you can see. And I was like, well, I don't want to spend $30 on a hardback book to basically just nothing new. I already have all the stuff. What do I need it for? But me being the completionist type, I bought it. And I will have to say one thing. This book is freaking amazing. Now, before, as you can see, they got rid of that Iron Gate format type thing, okay? And they got a new format going for this. Chapters have these things like this. The artwork is the same as on the book cover. The art is better. A lot of detail stuff. Now I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to start off with a negative. Okay? The big negative about this book is that the end of this book, which this book is 287 pages. Okay? Now, all this is this appendix stuff that comes basically straight from the Dungeon Master's handbook, or player characters handbooks. One of these things, and goes over character races and stuff like that. They didn't need to put this stuff in here. I mean, this is see, this is Tenets of Terror, ability scores and stuff like that. It starts at page 226. So almost 60 pages of stuff that is really in the player's handbook, and you have to have the player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide to play with this. 60 wasted pages that could have been used to describe more stuff and domains. It's a waste. You really didn't need it. However, that is really the only bad thing about this book. First of all, this book is a great coffee table book. I remember to let it sit there on my coffee table and people looking at it going, Domains of Dread, what the hell is that? Because the Dungeons and Dragons is very small, and you really see this. But let's get into what this book does that had never been done before, that turned the tide of things for Ravenloft in so many ways. First of all, this book basically 100% throws out the window, kills the idea of the Weekend of Horrors. I mean, it is very much, hey, you're going to have your characters based in Ravenloft. Here's some characters you're going to have. You're going to choose what domain they're from, what city they're from, if they are from a city, and you're not no more of this Weekend Horror stuff. This is now a living, breathing campaign world that you're not going to go visit. Ravenloft was going that way, it had gotten that way, but this just cemented it. 2, this book is so well written and updates the timeline. So not only did the first era happen and the second era happen, and now it is timelined to include all that. All products that had come before have had an effect and are noted in here in some way or another. Excellent. I love that. The red box did that, but as you're going to see in a minute, it didn't do it nowhere near as good as this does. Okay. Now, this excuse me, also reshaped the land. You see, unlike before, this goes into great details into the world of Ravenloft on how the people, the Dark Lords, hell, just everybody in the world reacted to the events that happened in these modules, like the Grand Conjunction or the Grim Harvest series or the supposed death of Van Richten. Now, this does not come with a poster map, so I want to show you how they kind of do this. Okay. They go into real great details about how Ravenloft has changed and how it works. Now, there's no, that's another, I guess kind of another bugaboo with this, is it doesn't come with a big world poster map. Okay, that's kind of going to go by the wayside a little bit too in Ravenloft. This book, I don't know. I'm so enamored by it. Okay, it explains how after the Grand Conjunction happened, the people in the world of Ravenloft reacted. But it was not called the Grand Conjunction. They didn't know what the hell was going on. It was called the Great Upheaval. Domains that had been their neighboring domains are all of a sudden gone. New domains are here. You got a gaping hole in the center. It's the Shadow Rift. People all over the whole core of Ravenloft are fearful. They really think that an apocalypse is coming. They've seen it happen. For all they know, they didn't know what happened to those domains that disappeared and that became islands of terror. They all knew, they thought they all just died. And so the people of the realm of dread are even more dreadful now. Even the Dark Lords. And this book goes into social, political, and economical ramifications and aspects of the domains with each other, which the other stuff didn't. For instance, Gehenna was a core domain. Remember, that was the one where Yango Petrovova, you know, he's a theocracy, he's the beast god, whatever. His people are starving. They imported a lot of grain from Falknovia, which Falknovia was really the bread basket of the domain of the core. Well, once Gehenna was gone, Falknovia couldn't sell as much grain because their main buyer of grain disappeared. And so that had a big economic impact on Falknovia. So what does Vlad Dracov do to kind of change the attention away from his country getting hit with an economic, depression? He starts attacking other countries. And so other countries like Lamordia, Richmalot, and I think Borka come up with a treaty. Like we have, like NATO, they come up with like a NATO, where if any one of those countries are attacked by Falknovia, the others pledge to help. This has not been talked about or really dwelled on before. 2 new seas opened up after the Great Upheaval. The Sea of Sorrows to the left, and man, I wish, here we go. The Sea of Sorrows to the west, and the Nocturnal Sea to the east. This started a whole new boom of ship-going vessels, marine trade, and travel and exploration. The Shadow Rift, right in the middle, had peoples and the evil coming out of it. The people were starting to get worried, and some people just said, you know what, we're going to start fighting against the darkness, and this forced people to start being a little bit more confronting. The Dukar, which was the gypsy killer that you met in the Evil Eye, with Gabriel's son, at the end of the adventure, you kind of bind him to the land so he can't wander off the land anymore. But he still has his hate for gypsies, so he's sending mercenaries and stuff all into neighboring lands to kill gypsies. Well, the gypsies are allies to a lot of these people in these other lands, like Borka and stuff like that. And so now he's starting almost active war down there, and the other lords are just not having it, and they're trying to retaliate against them. Borka and Dorvinia, which were 2 core domains, merged into one and became Borka. Now Borka was ruled by a female poisoner. I can't remember her name. And Dorvinia was ruled by a cousin of hers who was a male poisoner, and they were friends. But when the Great Upheaval happened, they were able to run to each other and give each other comfort because they thought the world was ending. And then when the Great Upheaval ended, since they were both in the same proximity, they both share a domain now. She's the actual lord, he's like the enforcer, but they hate each other now. And so now the people are suffering because they can't hurt each other because they're all beach immune to poison, but the people are suffering because they're at each other's throats. You want to know what currency people use? It's in here. Hazelin, who had banished magic before the Great Upheaval, now started allowing magic, and he has people all over the core who are interested in magic coming to his domain to practice and learn. He's trying to teach. He has a nefarious reason for it, but still. All the bordering domains of the Shadow Rift hate it and are constantly on high alert from it. Tempest starts an inquisition where they start to fight back against the Shadow Rift. And Tempest was a quiet, sleepy little domain. Falknovia is always on the aggression. And, you know, it's just... This thing goes into so many details about the politics, the treaties, what the other Dark Lords think of the other Dark Lords. What the people think of other neighboring realms, how they see them as backward fops or more sophisticated. Who has good, who imports what to who, you know, who has the good thriving economy. Now normally stuff like that is frankly boring as hell to me, but Domains of Dread, it just fleshed out the world and was so much more interesting with that kind of stuff in there. I mean, it just was. And, you know, Darkon, with Azelin supposedly dead, and Darkon is still reeling, and there's a power vacuum going on up there to see who can try to take control of it. You know, it's it's just wow. There's just so much put in there. People try to, in the Sea of Sorrows on the islands like Markovia, people try to colonize the place, okay, and or set up colonies, and they end up disappearing. You know, it's just really, really cool. And this book went into so much more detail than the other books. Is amazing. Another thing this book did was it came up with the idea of cluster domains. Now, some of the islands of terror, or some domains that were mentioned in stuff like Dark Lords, or some one-shot domains that had never really been mentioned before, like a Light in the Belfry. Well, all domains now have been given purpose and relativity in there, and they made them clusters. So I want to take a look at that for a second, just to kind of show you the islands. Some islands of terror still existed, okay, but like the Amber Waste, okay, they took Har-Akir, which you met in A Touch of Death, which you were there, and it used to be an island of terror. It's an ancient Egyptian desert domain, and it merged with Fazera, which is another kind of desert type domain that had been mentioned in what book was it mentioned in? I think I want to say it was in Islands of Terror that it got mentioned in. And then Sebua, which was in Dark Lords, which was another domain, desert domain. They all merged, and so now you have 3 desert type themed domains that have been just all by themselves, floating around, not really mentioning much, and they now become the Amber Waste cluster. The Burning Peaks, we'll come back to that in a second. Let's see here. They come up with pocket domains and stuff in that too. Now they detail. They don't detail all the clusters in here, but look, Saragassos, which was the sea kind of domain, mentioned the Islands of Terror. Sri Raji, which was an adventure we already played, and which was a single island of terror, and the Wildlands, which was an Islands of Terror, have now formed a cluster. The Steaming Lands, okay, Shadowborn Manor, Nadilia, and Avonlea, which had all been mentioned in 3 separate products, one-offs, Shadowborn Manor and Dark Lords, Avonlea and Lightning Belfry and Nadelia in Islands of Terror are now the Shadowborn cluster. So you see, it's now getting more cohesive. And I always had a theory that eventually all these different clusters would end up forming a second continent. And unfortunately, we never got to see that happen. Now a new cluster came in, the Burning Peaks. And basically, the Burning Peaks was a way to replace Azelin. Now, the Burning Peaks was ruled. It had two domains, Caviticus and Tovag. Okay. Now, Caviticus was ruled by Venza. Now, Venza is a god. That's right. That's a big coup for Ravenloft to get a god. He is a god, or demigod, however you want to make it, who's been around in D&D for a long, long time. He's very popular. He's been in adventures, been mentioned in a lot of products, and was a really evil, powerful, big guy. Well, somehow, and he's kind of like an Azelin. I'll show you a picture of him there. He's kind of like an Azelin. He's a lynch, and he's a demigod. And him and his mortal enemy, Kaz, the Destroyer, rules the domain next to him. And so they are ripped, ever warring against each other in their little Burning Peaks cluster. And so he was an attempt to bring, to kind of replace Azelin as the most powerful demi-lord and stuff in Ravenloft. And they introduce pocket domains, which is, and cluster domain, pocket domains, and the pockets and clusters in here, which and this is where they merge Timor and Pardon, which they call it Zarisa now, and the House of Lamet, which had been like a haunted house type thing. Think of House on Haunted Hill, or The Haunting, that type thing. Had been in like Dark Lords, and it ended up becoming a pocket domain, where it's just kind of there, floating around and appearing some places. So it introduced, and then it goes over everything that had come in before that, and adds to everything. It adds to everything that had come before, and it makes everything better. This made Ravenloft a much more cohesive, tight campaign setting, and a hell of a lot more interesting. I mean, I loved Ravenloft, but when I read this book, I was floored. It was exciting. It was just informative, and it opened up my eyes to see new things in Ravenloft that are more real world type. Trade, economic policies, politics, cultural stuff, cultures, and stuff like that really had not been touched on before. This brought it all to the forefront and explained it, and it made Ravenloft a hell of a lot more interesting and more alive. And boy, was this a great book. This was I still chide myself to this day for almost not buying this thing, because I didn't want to spend the $30. And it touches on everything from, and like I said, it introduces new character classes you can be, but its real gem is the Domains of Dread part, where it goes over, the ages, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Classical Age, the Renaissance Age domains, where it goes, and I'm just going to show you. It goes over each. Now it doesn't go in, and that is another fault you can say with this book, is it doesn't go over every domain and domain lord. It doesn't describe them all. It leaves some out, which that 60 pages could have been used to detail that. But when you look, it describes the land. It goes over the cultural level, the folk, and how they are. Native player characters, personalities, encounters, and stuff like that. And it just really goes into everything so good. Obviously, a must-buy. A little bit of an expensive one, but a must-buy nonetheless. And so, it is just so good. Domains of Dread. Next up, we got another telltale sign that Ravenloft was in a little bit of trouble. And we have what we call here the Forgotten Terror. And if you notice, you look on here, this product may be used with the Forgotten Realms Castle Spolzer game adventure. And I was like thinking, what? It's a two-part adventure, but it's a crossover. And I'm like, okay, now the idea of a crossover can be interesting and can be good and can work. Unfortunately, I don't think it works here. And in this stack I have Castle Spolzer here. This product may be used with the Ravenloft The Forgotten Terror game adventure. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at what Forgotten Terror is. And now you're going to see the backs of these things be different. A knife flashes in the darkness. You never see the face of your attacker. The adventure begins. Their spirits trapped by a cursed magical weapon, the heroes find themselves imprisoned on the surreal domain of Agarath. Here they must explore the mind of Charles Bulzer, the insane lord of the realm. Somewhere in his shattered dreams and tormented memories lie secrets that may enable the adventurers to escape. The Forgotten Terror is a new adventure for the Ravenloft campaign setting. It can be played as a standalone scenario or as a sequel to the events described in the Forgotten Realms adventure, Castle Spolzer. The unique nature of this domain and scenario make the Forgotten Terror easy for the Dungeon Master to run without forcing players through a linear plot. Alternate endings allow the DM to link this adventure to Ravenloft, the Realms, or any other campaign world. So, it's a crossover, but not. It's a forced crossover. And, you know, Ravenloft was really meant to be by its own, not be a crossover type thing. And this is, again, another sign of money problems. And the reason this doesn't work is because it's a forced crossover. It just doesn't. I'll read you the back of this Castle Spolzer. It says, an ominous encounter with a fortune teller sends a party of adventurers on a 200-mile journey across the lands of intrigue. While traveling through the towns and terrain detailed here for the first time that line their path, they hear rumors and obtain clues about their mission. Their ultimate destination is Castle Spolzer, a once proud stronghold that has become a den of terror. When the heroes enter the haunted keep, they meet a terrifying trio of residents: a madman armed with stolen magical power, a lynch whose secret laboratory houses untold horrors and treasures, and a furious ghost bent on revenge. These three ensnare the party in their fight over an ancient weapon. Each will stop at nothing to keep it from the other two. The heroes must choose whom they will ally, and the wrong choice could lead to their doom. Castle Spolzer is an adventure complete in itself. However, a crossover story, it offers every Dungeon Master a choice between two endings. The first leads the party in the realms. The second transports the characters to the demi-plane of dread, where the plot continues in the Ravenloft adventure of the Forgotten Terror. Okay, so first of all, if you're playing this as it should be played, because if you played the Forgotten Terror just by itself, if you don't include this one, it feels like only half an adventure. The story, the story is shortchanged because your characters don't know nothing about anybody in the story except what they learn in there. Whereas in here, they actually meet the people in there and are working either for or against them. Okay? This just doesn't have as much weight. It doesn't have as much consequence. It just only feels like half an adventure. Now there is an alternate beginning in here, to where if you don't play this, then you use this alternate beginning. But it's just It's like a half-baked idea, and I'll get into that in a second. But basically, this goes against what Ravenloft was doing. Ravenloft was saying, hey, no Weekend of Horrors type stuff. You know, make your characters from the Domain of Dread. Make your characters be inhabitants of Ravenloft. Well, how the hell can you do that when the first part of the adventure starts in Castle Spolzer? So, it just didn't make sense to me. So basically what it is you see this guy right here. He's the same guy on both things. You see her right here, right there. Basically what it is, this guy, there's a lynch living in his castle or something. The lynch is doing something to him. He forces him to kill his own sister, and then he goes crazy because of it, and you end up getting involved. Okay, so in the Forgotten Terror, the domain is, wait for it, a knife. Actually, the jewel of a knife. There's a magical knife, okay, magical dagger that has a jewel right here. There's a jewel right there, okay? Okay, that's the domain, okay, inside that jewel. So how it starts is basically you're killed by the magic dagger, and you have no choice in this, okay? It's like those old day modules back in the first era when you died and you were in a puppet body, or you died and Aislinn used you for this. It goes back to that, which we had strayed so far away from that. And so your life force is now in the jewel, and the jewel is these facets of the jewel, and you're going from one to the other, kind of reliving the guy's nightmares or his past, and you got to try to win or get out. And one's a gambling hall, then there's a dragon, then there's a few terror things, but it does not work. I'm sorry. I never liked it. I never cared for it. I remember getting it and playing it, and I was like, ugh. And it was just, it didn't. I said, well, you know what? Maybe I should get Castle Spolzer. Maybe it'll work better. And yeah, it worked a little bit better, but because you knew a lot more of the backstory. But I don't care about the Forgotten Realms and all that kind of stuff. So, and you can see there are two very different styles, okay? And I thought it was a big, you could have come out with something really good instead of that. But they had no choice. It was a forced crossover. And what it was an attempt to sell more Ravenloft, to get more people in for that play Forgotten Realms into Ravenloft and sell more Ravenloft products, while this was an attempt to get more Ravenloft people into Forgotten Realms and buy more Forgotten Realms products, so to make more money. And it was a big disappointment. I don't even think I really need to say anything else about that. Yeah, you know, a brand new, and then at the end, you know, you escape, the domain is done, it's on, it's over with. No more domain in the knife, you know. However, the next product would more than make up for that bad taste the Forgotten Terror left in my mouth. The Servants of Darkness. And here we get in to finally the great mystery of the Shadow Rift, and also repercussions of the Great Upheaval, or the Grand Conjunction. As first, you can see the cover, and it comes with a good little map, but it's like a mini map now. It's not the big maps that we're accustomed to. You gotta do budget some way. So let's see what Servants of Darkness is about. Now, as you're going to notice here, again, Adaptable for use with any AD&D campaign setting. Okay, unless you tweak stuff really hard, it is not adaptable for use for any AD&D setting. It is a Ravenloft adventure. The repercussions that have happened in Ravenloft adventures are the basis of this. Takes place in Ravenloft. This is Ravenloft. I don't know why that's there, but it's there, okay? Anyways, we know why it's there. And so anybody can pick it up. They can look at this cool cover and go, God damn, looks like this guy's burning a witch. Man, I like that. That's hey man, I can use this in my Greyhawk campaign. And then, you know, they don't know anything about Ravenloft. And, you know, it's kind of misleading, but whatever. Young Byrona has been judged guilty of consorting with the dark forces of Tempest, and now she will burn at the stake for it. The Inquisitors, priests whose zealousness sometimes stir whispers of doubt among the people, have condemned her with all the surety that comes with their holy power. Heroes of integrity and justice are needed to ferret out the truth. To succeed, they must travel a perilous path that winds through the labyrinthine tunnels of Mount Lamet and leads them to the dreaded hags of Tempest and Tristina the Banshee. Worse still, they must ultimately face the mysterious Prince of Shadows who manipulates the denizens of the domain for his own purpose. When to stand fast, when to run, only those who survive can say. Servants of Darkness is a standalone adventure that can also lead the party to investigate the misty chasm at the center of the Demiplane's core in the Shadow Rift, the next release for the Ravenloft campaign setting, for levels 4 through 6. This is an excellent module. It does like so many modules did in the golden age of Ravenloft. First of all, not only do you have 2 domains of the core that had really not been fleshed out. Tempest was fleshed out some in Dark Lords, but there was no adventure there, but it was fleshed out in Dark Lords. But Keening had really never been fleshed out. You know, and its domain lord is the Dark Lords of Tempest are the 3 hags. You know, think of like Clash of the Titans, those 3 witches. That's kind of what we get. They're the Dark Lords of Tempest. And Tempest is a domain kind of like grim fairy tales. You know, Little Red Riding Hood, that type of domain. Hansel and Gretel, stuff like that. It's that kind of domain. It was a sleepy little domain. People there were just really superstitious. There were only, I think, really 2 towns, and they weren't that big in the domain, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't. You know, a lot never really happened there. The hags really just kept to themselves, unless you went and bugged them. They had a ferocious appetite, so they did from time to time like eating people and goblins, and they didn't like it when people fell in love, and every now and then would ruin something like that, but they weren't constantly just going around murdering people. Then we got Keening, which was described in I want to say Dark Lords as well, but the Banshee Lord of the Domain, she wasn't really she was described, but her history is kind of going to get changed a little bit, and it's going to get changed for the better. So this is kind of like a reboot on her. But this adventure takes you through both domains. You come into contact with both domain lords. It fleshes out Tempest really well. It does Keening pretty good. Keening, it doesn't have any live people in the domain. It's basically a domain that has 1 city, and all the inhabitants of it are dead people, like skeletons and stuff like that. And it has a Mount Lament, and the Banshee wails from that from time to time. And it's a small domain. And it was kind of almost in the middle of the core, and they were kind of like just forgotten about. And also, has a really good adventure. And Castle Island, which is kind of like a pocket domain, which has its own lord there. So it's a new one, and it's so you get an adventure that has 3 domains in it. One's a new one, 2 have been there for a while, and we go over to 3 Dark Lords. And Castle Island will stay with Ravenloft. It's not like a one-off where you go there, you have the adventure, you kill whatever, and then it's done and forgotten about. It's mentioned again, and it's pretty neat. So anyways, as you can see, the format is now kind of the same style, where you have a scene and you have a little quote, and then you'll have your stuff there. And this is the first part of the thing to set up for the Shadow Rift. So this basically is what happens is, after the Shadow Rift formed, the people of Tempest, who were just always huddled in their houses, never really went out after dark, became squared, said, you know what, screw this, we're fighting back. And so they formed the Inquisition, led by this priest named Wynn. And they started ferreting out people who had been consorting with dark spirits or fairies. This is fairy heavy, okay? Fae and all that kind of stuff. A new kind of horror, which originally it was supposed to be this kind of stuff, which was supposed to be like Drow, the Dark Elves and stuff. But this is going to get changed. It got changed up. It's when Iraq was part of the core. Iraq disappeared after the Great Upheaval and no longer exists. And that was a domain that didn't have anybody living on the top of it. It had supposedly an underground city with the Drow living underneath it. But they scrubbed that. And the Banshee Lord was somewhat a cause of that. She was from there, but that's going to all get changed around. And so that's where our history kind of gets changed around. So the people are fighting back. The hags aren't really too keen on it. So what they kind of do is they kind of have this real ugly lady, Rihanna or whatever her name is. Some guy falls in love with her, and everybody, other females are jealous. Just like, how the hell does the guy fall in love with this ugly lady? And so they set up the idea through their little tricks and stuff like that, well, she has to be a witch, and she enchanted him. So there's going to be a big trial coming, and we know how the witch burnings and stuff turn out. Hopefully though, you're a party of adventurers. You come along and you're asked to prove her innocence, and so you go on a quest to prove her innocence. You confront the hags. You make kind of like a bargain with them, because they are very much like they are in the Clash of Titans. They're 3 sisters who love riddles and want you to do something for them, and they're just not going to kill you outright unless they're really, really hungry, but they want you to do something for them, and they'll keep their word to a certain extent. So you do something for them, and that leads you to Keening, the domain of Keening, where you have to go and confront the Banshee Lord, because she has something, or there's something in her catacomb lair that this mysterious Lord of Shadows wants and needs, and you find out he's kind of the one kind of behind this whole thing, but you don't really fully grasp why he's behind this whole thing. All you know is he's kind of behind this whole thing to get this certain object that he needs, and you kind of find out he was the one kind of responsible for the Banshee lady. And her story, how do you pronounce her name? Tristessa. She was like a Drow type elf lady, and she had a baby, and the baby was deformed, and they killed their deformed children. But she kind of loved it and didn't want to, and he kind of sold her out or something. And because he lied and sold her out, he had her staked to the ground when the sun came up, and the sun would kill her. And so her and her baby were burned alive by the sun, and that's why she's there, and she goes around looking for her baby all the time. Where's my baby? Where's my baby? And howls and stuff like that. And so she'll kidnap a baby, and every now and then, or tries to get somebody to, or if you want safe passage through there, you give her a baby, and she'll go and take care of the baby. But you know, she can't take care of it for real, so the baby will end up dying. And then when the baby dies, she'll go wanting another one. Okay, that's basically her story. And so you have to go through that. Her kind of end up kind of bargaining with her a little bit. You can fight her to get this object. And Lot is the guy, the Prince of Shadows. His name is Lot. He wants the thing, and why he wants, you're not too sure. But he ends up getting what he needs, and he goes back to where he's from, the Shadow Rift. And it ends on a cliffhanger with you having to go to the Shadow Rift to go and figure out what's going on. But Service of Darkness is a top-notch adventure. It covers a lot of stuff, gives a lot of detail, and it's what Ravenloft should be, and it is. It's a great thing. You're going to notice Steve Miller's name on a lot of stuff. And A1, highly recommend, highly. Next up, we have the second in the Children of the Night series, Children of the Night Ghost by the Karragat. I'm going to try to explain that as best I can. So, you know, TSR had, when they came up with Ravenloft and started putting out products, you'll notice that there are a lot of different authors of their products. There was no one author, or you know, there was not like 2 or 3 authors. Just about every product had a different author, and that's because TSR, you know, had writers on the staff, and they would come up with this stuff and so forth. But there was a group of people who loved Ravenloft, who were big fans, who ended up kind of, I don't know, I guess being so good fans, so big, they kind of got their way or got their break into the business. And that's people like John Magnum, I want to say Steve Miller. I may be wrong on some of it, on who it is. William Connors, people like that. And we'll take a look. You know, Steve Miller, these people, Cindy Rice, stuff like that. And they were shaping Ravenloft to be as great as it was. They are the reason behind the great Domains of Dread book. They're the ones who are making it more cohesive and shaping it to a great place. I mean, it was already great, but they're making it even better because they love it and they're fans so much, and I'm wholeheartedly for them. Well, Children of the Night is the second in the series, and it's what you cannot see can hurt you. Just ahead, a pale, undefined figure beckons. A clammy chill hangs heavily in the air. Unseen figures tangle in the hair of a whimpering victim as a low moan pulses all around and stretches into a wailing silence. Children of the Night Ghost details 13 horrifying and tragic beings that test the fear threshold of even the staunchest ghost hunter. The restless spirits depicted herein will force heroes to solve conundrums or look at ghosts in a new light. Every creature presented in this book has its own history, personality, and powers. Some of the haunts that the adventurers will confront include the following: Valana Waldrishan, a half-Visnanti ghost whose rage knows no bounds; Susanna Johnson, a lonely goddess who endlessly searches for her true love; the Ghost Cat, a monstrous being that draws tainted victims further onto the path of evil; Nikolai Melathenia, a child ghost who becomes what he hates most while protecting the defenseless. These are the Children of the Night. Children of the Night Ghost is the second book in a series that brings to unlife the creatures types detailed in the best-selling Van Richten guides. Each volume offers biographies of distinct and monstrous personalities easily added to any game, short adventures featuring each nemesis, which can stand alone or form a mini-campaign, unique ways to fight each foe, and adventure hooks for using them in future scenarios. And that's what it does. Now, of course, you're going to see right here, for use with all campaign settings. Now, honestly, this really could be used in all campaign settings, because Children of the Night Ghost kind of is my least favorite of these guides. And it's because a lot of stuff in here is so generic. Now, I don't know this, so I could be wrong, but I think that whereas Children of the Night Vampires had recognizable people that were already in Ravenloft, and a lot of the adventures took place in a lot of places in Ravenloft, this is a lot more ambiguous. It's a lot more vague about where some of these adventures take place. There's no, with the, I think, one or two exceptions, there's no real references to any other Ravenloft type stuff. It's all just, you know, introducing people for the first time. And of course, each ghost is a different type and has a different unique thing like the other one did. But we have Jimmy Upton, and then his adventure, the Ghost Cat, William Pelham, Anna Johnson. You know, I think the Beast of Hospitality. Where's that one at? Where's that? Is that in here? Huh. Well, no, I may have been wrong. Well, anyways, of course, you know, that's why this one is kind of like my favorite. I mean, my least favorite. Because, see, look, it doesn't, that doesn't really say this specifically takes place in this city or that kind of stuff. And some of the ghosts actually are just not as interesting as the vampires. So honestly, and I find this one to be the one that, of all the mini campaigns in all these guides, this one was the one that I had the hardest time and the least interest really in plugging some of these adventures in, because like I said, they could have took this place anywhere. This guy comes from the Birthright setting, and you know, he's I don't know, it's just some you know, small village of Scarnasso. See, you know, stuff like that. There's been no village in that. So honestly, Children of the Night Ghost was just an okay product. You could say a little bit of a disappointment, but it's still good. It's just not as good as the others to me. It's my least favorite of them. But that kind of mainly is a personal preference with me. Next up, the Shadow Rift. Now, you're going to notice you don't see anywhere on this, although the first module in this series said adaptable for use with any AD&D campaign. There's nowhere on here. Now, however, this book is thick. Look at how thick this thing is. This book, Shadow Rift, as you can see, is very, very thick. However, if this had come out a few years prior, this would have been a box set. And that is a bugaboo of mine, again, because I love box sets. This should have been a box set like Castles Forlorn or the Nightmare Lands, instead of a book like this. But like I said, Ravenloft was not doing that anymore. TSR wasn't doing that anymore. And that is a little bit of a disappointment. However, that aside, this is a excellent product. Even though I know it has mixed feelings with some people. And we'll get into that. But let's take a look at it. For many years, folk have gazed into the churning black vapors of the Shadow Rift and wondered at the horrors that might lie within. Some have speculated that it might be a realm of the doomed where tortured spirits suffer the hours of eternity. Others have speculated that it might be an empty domain, waiting for the arrival of a master who is evil enough to claim it and shape it in his own image. Even the mysterious Vistanti do not know what secrets are hidden in the depths of this gaping chasm. Now the time has come for the Veil of Shadows to be parted. Lot, king of the Shadow Elves, has reclaimed the mighty Sword of Arak. With this relic, he intends to set in motion a plan that has taken thousands of years to form. He will throw open the very gate of darkness and invite one of mankind's greatest enemies to walk the land of the living. And if he is not stopped, the rivers of Ravenloft will run red with the blood of the innocent. This adventure can be played independently or in conjunction with the Ravenloft adventure setting Servants of Darkness. Adventure Servants of Darkness for character levels 7 through 9. Now, one thing I will say is that Shadow Rift had been so hyped and so teased for so long, since '94, when it was appeared in the red box, that to many people there was no way this was going to be able to meet expectations or live up to the hype. No way. Next, what the Shadow Rift basically is a realm of fairy folk. And there are many different kinds of fairies. These little guys right here are fairies. There are these Arak are fairies. She fairies. Okay. Powery fairies. Portune fairies. So this realm, the Shadow Rift, is made up of many different races of fairies. Okay. Now fairies don't age. They're immortal. Basically, they live for millennia. And they do love to, every now and then, enslave humans that they find worthy by making them eat like fairy cake and stuff like that. And the kind of, what basically is they tempt you to eat some kind of fairy food. You eat it, your essence or whatever, your shadow kind of leaves your body, although your body stays where it is and it becomes like a mindless husk. I mean, it can do things like walk and do day-to-day activities, but it has no spirit, no spark. The spark went off with the fairy people to live in their realm and be with them. And, you know, they would take either beautiful people or great craftsmen or great artists and stuff like that because they were amused by it. They're kind of an amoral thing. They don't have the moral standards that humans have because they don't look at humans the way we look at each other, because they don't age, they have so much more power, and magic is so prevalent with them. They kind of see us as pets. Now some treat their pets nice and good, but some treat their pets like garbage. And that is probably one of the most scariest things about the fairy people and the Shadow Rift, is just their lack of empathy for mankind, because they don't see them like that. So you can't go walking into the Shadow Rift or you'll just die because it's a gaping chasm. But there was a secret way into the Shadow Rift, and that was how our adventurers get in there. Now this book details the domain of the Shadow Rift and its people, its different fairies, races. Let's have a look. Very well. As you can see, it goes and shows the domain, what's actually underneath the black cloak of darkness covering it, and its towns, and how the fairy look at humans, and everything. So basically, the setup is you come across a town that the fairy folk have basically stolen all the souls of the people, and the people are just walking around like mindless husk. You basically, while you're following Lot, the Prince of Shadows, you end up you see that the horror they can bring upon man. And Lot wants great warriors. He will take the souls of great warriors to fight in his army and stuff like that. So you end up going in, following him, or kind of getting into the secret way into the Shadow Realm. I mean, the Shadow Rift. Time doesn't work there. There's no night and day cycles like normal places. The blades of grass themselves can talk sometimes. It's full of magic and weird oddities and the fairy people, and you meet up with all different types of fairies. And basically, there's two factions. There's the Seelie and Unseelie court, and Lot is the prince of the Unseelie court, and I think his sister Maeve or whatever is the princess of the Seelie court. She is more benevolent to people, to humans, but she is not. She still looks at them like pets, but she's the type who will treat her pets good. Or Lot just sees people as tools, fodder, whatever means necessary to whatever a tool to get to, a means to an end and stuff like that. And basically, those are the two courts, and each court has certain fairies that are on their side and stuff like that. And there's been a balance in there. Maeve has stayed there in the Shadow Realm and has not been the Shadow Rift and not been going out, but Lot's been going out of the Shadow Rift and traveling the domain of the core looking for all these artifacts. And basically what he's looking for is a way to open the Obsidian Gate. Now the Obsidian Gate houses this, you could argue, most powerful evil being in all of Ravenloft. What's his name? Let me find him here. Yeah, and this thing is like a, kind of think of it as, well, come on now, where is this thing? Kind of think of it as like a Arkham horror or Cthulhuan type being. Ah, dog, man, I can't even find his name in here. Hold on. And he's beyond, Gwydion. Okay, Gwydion is his name. And basically, this is kind of like how he looks and stuff like that. And when you fight him, you fight like his eyeball, and then you'll fight his hand, and then you'll fight his tail and stuff like that. He's very Lovecraftian. And basically what he is this, well, you're not really sure as to what he is. God? Some kind of powerful elder god? Otherworldly type god? Who knows? Whatever he is. Well, whatever. He ended up creating these dark fae people to serve him as, a race, population, or whatever. And Maeve and Lot's parents were the king and queen. And finally they got tired of serving him, so they kind of rebelled against him, and they found a way to trap him in the Obsidian Gate. But Lot's father had to stay behind with him to make sure he was trapped in there. The gate had to be closed from both sides, and so Lot's father had to stay inside to close it from that side, and Lot had to close it from the outside. Though Lot kind of went, when his father was killed and had to stay inside, he kind of got shocked by it. It shook the guy. The guy wasn't really a bad guy, but that kind of drove him crazy. So he needs all this regalia of the Iraq, like all these different artifacts, to open the gate, because Gwendolyn has been sending him like dreams and visions claiming to be his father, and that he's trapped in there and he needs to come get him out, and that Gwydion is gone and stuff like that. Of course, Maeve doesn't believe it. Maeve knows what's really going on, but Lot's kind of went off the crazy, done that, so he needs his stuff. So he gets that stuff, gonna perform the ritual. You end up getting there by the end, and because Maeve asks you to help, to help stop him. You end up getting there at the end when the ceremony, or when Unlock is coming on. Of course, Lot finds out real quick that no, his daddy's not alive in there. That is Gwydion, and Gwydion wants to be free. And if he can be free of that Obsidian Gate, then he can just escape the realm of Ravenloft. He's powerful enough to do that. You get into an epic battle with a Cthulhu type or a Lovecraftian type monster, where you, like I said, you fight pieces of him. You fight like his eye, and then I have to find that damn picture. Let me see if okay, well, alright, we got Gwendolyn's technical, you know, his fingered hand, his talon, his hoof, his smashing fist, his tail. He's still kind of, they still kind of leave him. They don't reveal him. It's not like a full reveal of him or exactly what he was. Gwydion wanted the Fae race, the Iraq elves, to create this obsidian gate to be a transport to different worlds, that Gwydion can lead his people there and just destroy and conquer these other worlds. But they instead built something to trap him in it, and so he ended up getting trapped in there. Now he hasn't really been able to do anything. He's been stuck in there for a long time. But then when the Grand Conjunction happened, it weakened the barriers that kept him in there, and that's when he started being able to communicate with Lot and start sending him them false dreams and visions. So the Grand Conjunction is what kind of started this. Now, if you play this wrong and Gwydion can get out, he can get out and just wreak havoc across Ravenloft and the whole world, and even leave, and it's really bad for any campaign or anything like that. But this is a great adventure, a great source book, just a great product, period. But you kind of have to like the Fae. You have to like these fairies, or you have to think at least they're interesting, and that although this is not a gothic horror archetype type world, this is a medieval superstitious type thing. You know, because fairies and stuff like that, you know, were kind of, I guess, mysterious and terrifying thing that was talked about for long times in the Middle Ages, and stories written about them, and even in the Renaissance and stuff like that. But we kind of don't think about these kind of type things anymore. Fairies and forest spirits and water spirits and, you know, stuff like that. We don't associate that with horror or anything like that. So you kind of have to get into that in order to really like this. I'm sure some people were disappointed what the Shadow Rift was, but this was a different type of evil or horror that had not been touched upon in Ravenloft. I don't think it quite lived to the hype, but Gwydion can be a really menacing type thing, and this is written beautifully. It's a great epic adventure. You know, you're going through the fairylands, you're meeting all the different things, you're getting all these different situations, you're seeing how alien and how amoral to us the fairy people can be, and you're basically go to a couple dungeons and get the stuff to try to stop Lot, and then at the end you see him open the doors to another world. So the Shadow Rift is another excellent product. Must have. Definitely a must have. Next up is Champions of the Mist, and again, adaptable for use with any AD&D campaign setting. Kinda, I guess you can say, kinda, although some of the goals of these guys doesn't fit with the other campaign setting, and you'll see what I mean. And Champions of the Mist. Even in the darkest night, when all hope seems lost, true heroes shine brightly. Designed for use by dungeon masters and players alike, Champions of the Mist greatly expands upon the role of heroes on the demiplane of Dread. Inside are many exciting new options. More than a dozen new character kits, such as Guardian, Knights of the Shadows, and Psychics, designed to give new and existing Ravenloft heroes a flavor all their own. Complete game statistics for many characters from the Ravenloft novels, including Larissa Snowmane, Dance of the Dead, Ivan Dragoff Mordenheim, and Brother Dominic, Tapestry of the Dark Souls. Role-playing guidelines and tips to make Ravenloft characters different from their counterparts in other advanced Dungeons & Dragons campaign settings. Long-awaited game statistics and biographical information about some of the Demiplane's greatest heroes, including Alink Ray, George Weatherme, and the land's greatest avenger, Gond Egal of the Circle. Gondigal of the Circle. Rules for using firearms in the Land of the Mist. This is another excellent book. And the reason being is, one, for many reasons really. One, as you can see, it kind of gives an introduction to what you want to do with your certain champion or hero. So it expands on player characters. It gives player characters more freedom and more options available for their characters, and that's great. And it fits within Ravenloft. I guess that maybe that part can be used with this, but that's about it, because some of the other stuff doesn't jive with any campaign setting. Okay, and then though of course the Crucible here, these are new kind of adventurers you can be. You know, and Monster Hunter, Pistolier, and the firearms thing is a big deal, because there are some domains in Ravenloft that are Renaissance and a little bit higher, though there are not many of them, type of cultural levels in those domains, and they have pistols, and it adds a whole new thing to it. And I think that was greatly needed, because that's a cool concept of having pistols and a sword, and it just, Dungeons & Dragons didn't have guns. But yeah, here we go in Ravenloft, because a few domains have the technology able to, you can have a guy with guns. And it's pretty damn awesome. And I loved it. It's just, you know, of course, you know, stuff requires upkeep, because these aren't, you know, like 9mm. These are like, you know, the old flintlock type pistols. But still, it's really good, and the rules for them, I think, fit well. You know, and it just opens up characters and role-playing a lot. It opens up the world a lot, which I really liked. And like I said, I couldn't think of any other campaign settings that, except for maybe one or two, that had guns. Now Ravenloft was able to have guns. Okay, and then we get into our champions. So we have something, Brother Dominic, of course he's from Tapestry of Dark Souls. And what this did was this brought a lot of popular characters that were in the novels, but other than being mentioned a few times, it brought them inside, really more in Ravenloft and into campaign. It just connected everything. Ivan Dragoff was from Mordenheim, and he was one of the cooler characters in that book. And so now you can team up with him and have adventures with him, and it's really cool. And Gong Goodall was somebody who had been mentioned way in the black box, and then he kind of got forgotten, because he was from God, where was he from? He was not from Ravenloft. He was drawn into Ravenloft, and he was a hero in the other world, and then he got put into Ravenloft and kind of lost his way a little bit, but now he's a champion, so they reworked him some. It was really good, and they give you adventure hooks for it. Hermos is a guy from the Carnival book, and he'll come into play later on in a future product. Terra Colonna is another hero that was introduced in the box set, the original black box set, that had been kind of forgotten, because not all characters in the black box set that they introduced, although most of them were demi-lords of domains, not all of them were evil. They did include a few good characters in there, and she was one of them. And so this updates her thing. It tells you, you know, since you first saw her, okay, you remember reading about her way back when. Well, this is what has happened to her since then, and this is what she's doing now. And it's the same with all of them. Okay, Hilda and Frederick Kreutzer, they're the heroes in Mordenheim. So, you know, they're put into here, and they're pretty cool. Alan Ray is somebody who's been called the Great Detective, and who's been mentioned a lot in Van Richten guides. Van Richten worked with him a lot, and a few other products he was mentioned. He was always this like Sherlock Holmes level type character. That's kind of what he's based off of, is Sherlock Holmes. Now you finally get to meet him and see what he's been up to. Larissa Snowmain is a fan favorite character from Dance of Death, although I didn't care for that book that much. Basically tells what happened to her after the book, what she's been up to, stuff like that. And then George Weatherby, who was originally from the Black Box set as well, he's undergone a radical change because of all the things that have happened in his life since then. And now he used to be like a shy, good hero type person, and now he's like a really vengeful force for good who may take things too far. And these guys can pop up in your adventures. You can plug them into any campaign you want to team up with them, and they're interesting. All of them are interesting people, especially if you like the novel that they were in and they were one of your characters. This book does a great job. So it puts people from the novels that if you liked, and it brings people that Ravenloft had kind of forgotten about from the original Black Box. A must-have, another great product. Okay, then we have Vensa Reborn. Okay, and we already had a discussion about him, and now you're going to get to go to the Burning Peaks cluster and not really particularly confront him because he's just too powerful, especially in a module of this level. And this is not a high level module, but I think it's a medium level module. It's 5 through 7. It says, from the depths of antiquity he rises. Trapped in the mockery of his former kingdom he broods. In hatred and spite against the one who betrayed him schemes. The other lords of Ravenloft may possess horrific power, but Vensa is a god. Trapped by the mist of Ravenloft, the lynch lord Vicenna plots his escape and revenge against Cass the Destroyer, his traitor's former lieutenant. Vicenna Reborn, or Vensa Reborn, takes brave heroes into the dark, oppressive domain of Tor Gorak, where Cass whips his subjects into submission to serve his never-ending war against Vensa and Catvidus, a realm in the grip of ancient magic and malevolent undeath. The heroes must struggle to stop arcane rituals, insane cultists, and monstrous abominations from granting Vensa, the chained god, the power to fulfill his dark dreams. Vensa Reborn presents a terrifying tale of betrayal, madness, and sorcery that may tear apart the demiplane of dread itself. Okay, so the much hyped appearance of Vensa in Ravenloft, and it's an okay adventure. It's slightly above average. This takes place basically in the Burning Peaks cluster, mostly in it takes place in both of them, really. These worlds are horrible to be in. Literally, the air can kill you. I just tell you. And it's basically, Vensa has, instead of focusing on getting out, he's focused on killing Kaz the Destroyer, finding a way to defeat him. The dark powers are preoccupied him from getting out by putting his most hated enemy right next to him, and he can't really touch him. So there's a plot by these cultists to have Vensa reborn through a child or something like that, and that way he can leave the demiplane of dread and get revenge on Kaz and all this stuff, and you're basically there to try and stop it. Now, it's like I said, it's a good adventure. It may not live up to the hype, Vensa, but it's all right. But it does have a different feel. I think this one they tried to focus on ancient terror and stuff like that. But I don't know. Depending on how you feel is how it worked. I do recommend getting this product. But just to let you know, Vensa and Kaz would both end up leaving Ravenloft. Their domain, this Burning Peaks cluster, officially ends up getting out of Ravenloft and going back into, Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms or wherever they were. Unofficially, you can still make it inside of Ravenloft when 3rd edition comes around, but when 3rd edition does come around, they have done, because of this adventure or wherever is going on, I'll get to that in a little bit. As you'll see, he does end up escaping Ravenloft and Cass without Vicenna being there. There's no reason for Cass being there, so either Cass dies or gets out of Ravenloft as well. But a good adventure nonetheless. especially if you like Mensa. Next up, Children of the Night Werebeast. As you can see, no adaptable for use for any campaign. Alright, now this is actually probably one of my more favorite of the Children of the Night ones. I really like this one. It says, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Oh well, never mind. We'll read about that. Children of the Night Werebeast is the third book in a series that brings unlife to creature types detailed in the best-selling Van Richten guides. Each of the creatures depicted herein carries its own history, its own special curse, and its own mini-adventure that will test the mettle and wits of novice and experienced adventurers alike. Some of the monsters that the heroes will confront include the following: Mika, a cat that became almost, but not quite human. Professor Arcanus, a collector of rather strange curiosities and artifacts. Mother Fury, a woman who loves what she is and wants to share her gift. Henry Milton, an artist who isn't sure if art imitates life or vice versa. Dr. Horseman, a scientist with a unique perception of progress. These are the Children of the Night. This product was designed for use for the Ravenloft campaign setting, but it can easily be adapted for use in any AD&D game world, or it can be used by itself for an evening of horror. I'm going to slide that in there. So, Children of the Night. Honestly, I really like this one. You got a were snake in here, believe it or not. That's right, a were snake. You have probably the two favorites are Professor Arcanus, who's really cool, and he's like, oh man, was he like? He's like that snake oil salesman that has, see Dracula's bones here type thing, but he really has a few things, but he's a werebeast. And Vajoran Horseman, who's like a Mangala. That's who he's based off of. He's a scientist in Falknovia who can basically do human experiments on anybody because, you know, he's the head of some kind of thing. He's trying to create super weapons or super soldiers for Vlad Dracov is what he's doing. And he's experimenting on stuff, and he's like a Joseph Mangala. He's just what he's like, and he's really evil. Kiss of the Serpent Woman is the were snake one, and you have a good little map there. They have the mummy here against the were jackal. It's just a really good. I think there's a lot more, in my opinion. There's a even type of a Phantom of the Opera type thing. Andre de Sang, he's like I think a were rat on a kind of like a ghost ship type thing. And there's definitely more hits than misses in this. So I recommend Children of the Night Werebeast very much. Another great continuation. Alright, so now I have TSR Jam 1999. Now it's not really a Ravenloft product per se, but I included it in here because basically what TSR Jam is a set compilation of adventures from TSR's popular Adventures Guild program. So basically you get an adventure for each campaign setting that they deem worthy of. You have Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Planescape, Ravenloft, Dragonlance, and stuff like that. And so the Ravenloft adventure in this is The Heart's Final Beat, page 37. And it's by John Magnum, who's a pretty good Ravenloft author. And it talks about the Order of Guardians and Champions of the Mist. It's kind of like a companion piece to Champions of the Mist. You have a good little map here. So you get, it's a 37, 41, 42, 43, 45, almost 10 pages, about 8 pages. It talks about the Whistling Fiend, who was mentioned in Van Richten's Guide to Demons. It has a lot of stuff to do with stuff that it has a lot of Ravenloft references, so it's really a good little mini adventure. It's one you can plug in. I included it here because it has that in there. I wouldn't buy the whole book just for the adventure unless you're a completist. But if you find it for like $1 or $2 or something, hell yeah, it's worth it, man. Get it. You know, I think there may be even a download for the Heart's Final Beat online somewhere. So there we go. Okay, so you remember when I said that Vince would not stay around Ravenloft very long. Well, Steve Miller and Bruce Cordell wrote Die, Vince, Die. Okay, now, this is a thick, again, this would have been a box set. Even though it's not a Ravenloft adventure, this would have been a box set and anything. Okay, the end of the world is at hand. Okay. A hideous death cult has seized control of an ancient artifact monument known as Torvag Bargu. The power behind the cult is the Old One himself, Auz, the evil, demonic master of an empire. He's on an all-or-nothing quest for supremacy over the world and the heavens beyond. To stop him, heroes must face horrors never dreamed of, journeying to a shadow city where death rules and the living cower. Here Uz will achieve his mad dream by destroying the imprisoned master of that alien citadel, Vicenna, the mightiest lynch and immortal demigod. 2 items exist with the power to stop Uz, the eye and the hand of Vicenna, but using them carries fantastic risk. Not even the gods know what will be unleashed when these items are fully activated. Die, Vincent Die, takes the heroes from Greyhawk campaign to the demiplane of Ravenloft and then to the planescape city of Sigil. However, none of the material from these settings is required to play. Okay, so basically what this is a book that takes place in 3 different campaign settings. Okay, and it does not start in Ravenloft. The middle part is in Ravenloft. The middle part takes place after Vensa Reborn. And the heroes, of course, start in Greyhawk, but they have to go to Ravenloft, Vince's domain in Ravenloft, and have an adventure there and get some stuff, and then they end up going to the Planescape. And then, of course, this is how Vince ends up breaking free. You either destroy him or he breaks free. Either way, this is how he's no longer in Ravenloft because of this adventure. This adventure gets him out of Ravenloft. Apparently, I guess they want him back in. So, how could you fit this into Ravenloft? Well, you don't necessarily have to. You could tweak it to where if you want to just do the Ravenloft adventure, you can. Okay. Or if you wanted to, have some heroes take place in Greyhawk, or somehow get to Greyhawk, and then to the Outer Planes or something like that, where you have to tweak a lot of it, just to say that. I never did play it. So basically, it just basically goes over, even though he's trapped in Ravenloft, there's still a plan. Okay, and then the heroes accidentally discover Uz is up to no good. They go on his trail to stop him. The heroes are a mysterious site sacred to the vanished Vicenna. See, he'd vanished. Nobody knows where he's at. They don't know he's really in Ravenloft. Okay, heroes, relic Vicenna cultists, and when they finally penetrate Heart, they find a powerful gate. It lies open to Vicenna's realm of imprisonment, still open after Uz's use of it a few weeks pass. Heroes who make the leap find themselves in Vicenna's transplanted realm, which is known as, in the whispers, as Citadel Cavitus. Okay, Uz is there. The hero, they discover that Vicenna, who's actually a demi-power, most likely to achieve godhood. Okay, and then he's going to be able to ascend, and then they got to go to the Planescape type of domain. So you could incorporate it into your Ravenloft campaigns. This is a really good module, though. It's a really good adventure with all 3 parts. It's like you don't need to have any product from any of the other any of the campaigns. You don't have to have anything from the campaigns. This is self-contained, and you can play with it by itself. It details the history of everything and what's going on. So you don't really need anything else. But if you're a Ravenloft fan, the part that takes place in Ravenloft, you can somehow incorporate, or you could somehow tweak to where you can play this, and you can maybe have your heroes escape Ravenloft as well. Who knows? But I include that in this, even though it's not an official Ravenloft product. Some of it does take place in Ravenloft. Next up, Children of the Night: The Created, and that cover is awesome. This is another very good Children of the Night book for use in Ravenloft or any other campaign D&D setting. Ugh. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Within these pages lie the stories of 13 madmen and their singular creations. Some are flesh and blood, others glass or wax, even metal or mist. Whatever their makeup, each has the will to live, and sometimes that means needing to kill. They are more than just golems. They are the created, and they are ready to make your acquaintances. Among those lurking inside, the chaperone, a bestial companion with grave defects. Automatic Man, a corroded butler entombed in rubble, eager to serve up terror anew. Angelique, a perfect beauty with an imperfect past, terrified by the killer within. And Dr. Bolenbach, Emil Bolenbach, who we've seen before in Chilling Tales and has been mentioned in a few other products. So you with him in here, you can string along a mini campaign with him as a villain, because you had an adventure with him in Chilling Tales. He's in here. He's mentioned in a few other places. What was he? What else was he in? He was in something else where he was hired. Shadow of the Knife. That's right. Shadow of the Knife. He's at, which I won't be going over. Well, I'll go over that in a minute. Shadow of the Knife. He was in that too. So, great. Children of the Night: The Created is the 4th volume in a series that celebrates the horrors detailed in the best-selling Van Richten Monster Hunters compendiums. Each of these creatures in this book is introduced through a complete story describing its origin, powers, and personality, as well as a short adventure. While these monsters are designed for the Ravenloft campaign setting, blah blah blah. Now you're saying, wait a minute, Van Richten's Monster Hunter compendiums, what the hell is that? Okay, so Ravenloft, around this time, came out with, I think, was it 2 or 3 books that is basically combined all of the VR guides into one book, kind of like almost like a Reader's Digest type thing. I think it took the first 3 and put them in a book, and they didn't add or really change anything. They're just reprints. They're just those guides crammed into one book. But they did come out with a new VR guide, because it was an uneven number. I think it has 9. I think it was 3, 3, and 3, which I don't think they came out with 9. I think they came out with 8 guides, and so they needed another one to make, and it came out with hags or witches, whatever it was the 9th one. So the 3rd Van Richten compendium, or the last one they came out with, had the hags thing, which was all new material in it. Okay, and it was another good VR guide. But the book is like a little bit shorter than the regular VR guides, and they're all just kind of crammed in there. So that's what those were. And it was a nifty idea. Hey man, some of these are going out of print, or some of these are hard to come by. Let's just cram all these guides into a couple different volumes. And well, we want to make it even, so let's go ahead and come up with a new one. We hadn't touched on hags anyways. Hags are a pretty cool evil group of monsters. Let's come up with that. And so they did. And it was pretty good. Unfortunately, though, this is the last Children of the Night that created. Because pretty soon Ravenloft will no longer exist. TSR will be bankrupt. And so the series would not continue. And this is... Every one of these this one was better to me than the Werebeast, which I really liked the Werebeast, and this one to me was even better in many ways. So they kept getting better. Unfortunately, we never see a Children of the Night, the Vistanti. Children of the Night, the Lynches. Children of the Night, the Mummies. Children of the Night, the Hags. Children of the Night, Fiends. We never get to see any of that, and it's a big disappointment that we didn't. And I'll get into my my heartbreak in a little bit, but yeah, Children of the Night, the created, has a lot of good, cool things that have been mentioned before. There are a few things, but look at this, man. This is Vincent Price right here from the House of Wax. Okay, that's him, and that's who he's based off of. And he has, a wax museum, and so it's just, this guy is just cool looking as hell. He's like a tree golem. Automatic Man is basically a haunted house possessed by an evil spirit, and it takes place in certain places. These adventures take place in certain places. The aggregate one's not that good. Minkins is basically, he's the reanimator. He's Herbert West is basically what this is. And this is a series of little mini adventures, but it's not that cohesive. That one could have worked, had been a little work, but the aggregate, man, I wish this one right here, Gestalt, could have been a little bit better. So there are some misses in this. Chaperone I think is really good. It's a toy come to life, a stuffed animal come to life. But the hits are really good in this. So it does have a few misses, but the hits are really good, but I highly recommend it. And, now we come to the very last Ravenloft product, or at least we thought. Carnival. For use in Ravenloft or any other AD&D campaign setting. Sure it is. And it is Ravenloft's freak show. That's what it is. It's loosely based off the J. Robert King novel I, Carnival, where some of these people in here were in that book. But basically what happened in that book was the ringmaster guy, the head of it, going around having his little freak show, and you come to find out he's the one who caused everybody to be freaks for his own evil purposes. They rebel and they eventually win, destroy him, and win their freedom. It doesn't specifically take place really anywhere, and it's a little generic. I didn't really care for it that much, but then there had not been a spooky freak show carnival in Ravenloft. And there's nothing more spookier than Carnival, Lost Souls, spooky freak show type thing, which Ravenloft really needed. So they came out with Carnival, and they kind of fitted in with the novel a little bit. Like I said, a few of the people in here are from that, but a lot of these people are newer entries, and they have a new leader, and I'll get into that in a minute. It has the Gentleman Caller. It reveals all about the Gentleman Caller, who's been popping up from here and there in Ravenloft products, causing havoc. Well, this is the payoff to it. Freak show or sanctuary, it's all a matter of perspective when you're at Carnival. A carnival offers a glimpse of abnormal and unnatural things most Gentile folk never talk about, much less see. This carnival is not a simple sideshow, though, and its performers are far more than freaks on display. Carnival is a wandering haven for those who have no place else to go, including the adventurers who made enemies of the wrong people. Under the protection of its mysterious mistress Isolde, I guess, it offers refuge to those rejected by the world. Outcasts and lost souls of all kinds can find solace here, and sometimes even a second chance at life, but nothing at Carnival comes without a price. This accessory draws back the curtain on dark secrets that will enrich any AD&D campaign with a touch of the bizarre and horrific. Included are over a dozen richly detailed non-player characters, details on the price that Carnival exacts from those who travel with it, and its story seeds to lure unsuspecting heroes into a web of mystery and trickery. Okay, it's not an adventure, it's a supplement. Okay? And it is one of the best written supplements I think I have ever in my life read. It is fantastic. It is told from the characters in here points of view, basically. And it is one of the best reads of any Dungeons and Dragons product I think I've ever came across. Because like I said, you're reading it like you're there. See, Tyndall starts it off. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome to the short, welcome to the tall. Welcome angles. And the whole book, except for the box stuff. Carnival of Fear was the novel. Yeah, that's right. Carnival of Fear is basically the Dungeon Master stuff that tells you what's really going on. All the rest of the stuff is telling you from their perspective and your perspective of actually being there. So it reads like a really, really good story. And man, is it great. And you know, it was a shame because at the time we thought this was the last Ravenloft product to have ever come out, and it ended on such a high note. This is considered by many one of the best products ever for Ravenloft, and it is, and like I said, because it reads so good, and it's by John W. Mangrum and Steve Miller, and it is a fantastic read. It's a fantastic thing. I wish they would have did more with it. Oh my God, if they would have done more with it. And so basically, the leader of the carnival is, where's she at? Isolode, and that's her right there. And she is, for all intents and purposes, an angel. Okay? She's an angel who's stuck in Ravenloft. She came to Ravenloft to kill the Gentleman Caller, who is a demon who she's a rival of. Okay? But she feels very bad for a lot of the people here and stuff like that. So she formed this carnival. Unfortunately, just like demons warp the land and warp people around them, even though she's an angel and doesn't mean to, she warps the people around her and the land around her to a certain extent. And she takes in outcasts and rejects. And like I said, some of these people were already freaks when she gathered up the remaining group of people from Carnival of Fear that were still alive, the remaining freaks that were together. But a lot of the new people came in that were on the run or had problems or had things, and they've since regressed into something like man, how do I explain this? Okay, so let's say it's called the twisting is basically what it is. And like Mr. Question Mark is that, and it says or the vampires, before the twisting, Amelia's wings were stunted and useless, but they were small enough that she could hide them underneath her cloak. But now that she's in Carnival, her wings get bigger and she can fly either way. He's a wax golem, and she provides protection, and the Dark Lords cannot enter her area, cannot enter this protected area around her. They can't do it. So these people are safe from the Dark Lords or any other evils that try to get them. They're protected from that. And the carnival is traveling from domain to domain. It can go, even with a domain lord's borders are closed, they can cross the borders. It doesn't matter. They can ride the mist. However, she's continuing. The reason she moves around is because she's looking for the Gentleman Caller. However, the dark powers of Ravenloft give the gentleman caller a warning that she's hot on his trail, because right before her and the carnival appears, these flyers show up of this freak show carnival and that it's coming, and she has no control over that. So he knows that they're coming in advance, so he hightails it away. They're there. Every now and then they pick up a few strays. They perform. You know, they got to eat. You know, you see this lady, the living skeleton. You know, she's still fit, but because she has personality defects, which we all do, we all have flaws. It brings out the flaws in a freakish way that are physical. Like, see, she was like vain and all that kind of stuff. She wasn't an evil person, but she was just really vain and self-centered, and so that manifested, and now she's become like a gaunt skeleton, and she can't, no matter how much she eats. So you see, it kind of brings that out. Wooden head, and these are such great characters. You know, he's cursed in a way because he was greedy, or some people are greedy and stuff like that. You know, just that. And so there, and then you have the gypsies, who, besides the freaks, the gypsies, who were, for whatever reason, Madame Fortuna is like the leader of them. She is, they were kicked out from their tribes, and so they have no place to go, and so they have this ability to wear this special white face paint makeup. Now they don't talk, only Madame Fortuna talks. They pick one and let that one be the spokesman for them, and they're the ones that guide the carnival through the mist, and Isolde protects them. But they wear this special face paint makeup that inhibits the freakish nature stuff manifesting on them. They have to wear that, and they can't talk, and so they're unaffected by the twisting, but they have to pay a price. They have to just wear that makeup and can't talk, and then like once a year they can take the makeup off and stuff like that, and so the twisting will affect them a little bit, and it starts to affect them a little bit each time, and that type of thing. And then so the book tells Tyndall is the barker, and he's telling you what he thinks is going on and what's up with Isolde, and introducing you to other characters. And so the first chapter is you're basically seeing Carnival from his point of view. The second chapter is you're seeing the Carnival from Madame Fortuna's point of view, and she has more insight really into what Isolde and everything is, because nobody really knows what she is. They don't know what she is, but she seems to be the best one that knows what she is. Chapter 3, the Hall of Horrors, are like the real bad freaks, and they're from Picali, and he tells you his point of view, and he doesn't like Isolde. As a matter of fact, he's secretly trying to undermine her and start a rebellion against her, basically to take her out. And he's trying to get you, the reader, to take his side, and he sees her as a demon, a thing of evil, and he's like, she can't be good. I mean, Jesus, look at all these freaks that are here, like the fat guy. These are the real bad freaks, the ones that have really gone off the rails. The technical girl, the geek who eats all this stuff, and he's forced to eat it. He can't. The twisting's got him so bad that he has to eat that garbage stuff. And, you know, the twisting's got this guy so bad he's so fat he can't move and stuff like that. So they've kind of teamed up with him. So Isolde tolerates it. They can't really do anything to stop her or anything like that. But it sets up adventure hooks, you see. And then the adventure scenarios, it has a few summaries of a few little adventure scenarios that you can space them out. You don't have to have them all back to back. You can space them out in between other adventures where you come in contact with Carnival and Isolde a couple times, and then eventually you do have this grand adventure, which is, like I said, it's just a summary about it, where Professor Bacali finally makes his move and traps Isolde, and the gentleman caller shows up, and you can either destroy the gentleman caller or help Bacali defeat Isolde and stuff like that. Or if you don't help her out, the gentleman caller wins and destroys Isolde and stuff like that. I would have loved a freaking module or a box set on this, man. I think everybody would have. But like I said, this thing reads like such a great story, and you're told this story and stuff about it from 3 different perspectives, and it's just so engaging. It's one of my absolute favorite, and I think the best Ravenloft products out there. Must have. Now, before we get into the end of the Ravenloft, let's talk about some of the books that came out during this period. Lord of Necropolis, which is written by Jean Deweese, who wrote King of the Dead, is a sequel to King of the Dead. For a century and a half, Aisling had been lord and prisoner of the greatest domain in Ravenloft. For a century and a half, he searched and fought for his freedom, and now, at last, it was at hand. To gain his long-sought freedom, all he had to do was journey through the mist of time and slay his greatest enemy. 200 years before his own birth. But the voices that had haunted and taunted him since the days as a mortal sorcerer, had something else in mind. This basically kind of summarizes what happened during the Grim Harvest. How Aisling thought of it. It basically starts right back up where King of the Dead left off. How he's coming up with the Grand Harvest. It goes a little bit over the Grand Conjunction, and what happens a little bit up to the Grim Harvest, maybe a little bit after. It's not as good as King of the Dead. You'd think it would be, but it's not. It skips and plays with a lot of history a lot. It also tries to explain the dark powers, which is a big no-no. You don't do that. Just leave them ambiguous. Don't explain them. And and it's just not as good. It's still a good read. It's still interesting if you like Aisling, but King of the Dead is the better book. It is interesting to see the differences between how things played out in the modules and in regular material and how they played out here. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend getting it, but just don't expect it to be as good as King of the Dead. Shadowborn is the next book. Once he had aspired to become a paladin, that was before the sun itself refused to shine upon him. Now his holy powers are failing him, and his title has been given to another knight, and grim despair mires his every step. If he is to be redeemed, Alexei Shadowborn must discover the source of the curse that blackens his spirit. The answer lies nearly 2 decades in the past, when a woman he barely remembers fell at the hands of a diabolical assassin. Somehow the darkness that struck her down has left him unclean in the eyes of the god he desires to serve. But how has her burden become his? Shadowborn follows Alexei as he travels from the alabaster castles of the Great Kingdom to the blackest regions of Ravenloft in a macabre tale of darkness, despair, and redemption. And it's basically to do with Shadowborn Manor, which is the small domain in the Shadowborn cluster now, with Ebonbane. Ebonbane is this Lady Shadowborn. We'll start with this. Lady Shadowborn was a great paladin. Fought much evil over her life. Well, she got old. Was going to retire at Shadowborn Manor, but she had many enemies. So they conjured up a demon excuse me, to destroy her. The demon ended up getting trapped in this sword called Ebonbane. And the way it works was, now Ebonbane can float around and do stuff on its own, and it has powers and stuff like that. But usually what happens is he gets somebody to pick him up. He automatically kills and consumes the soul of the person that picked him up. And so the person carrying him around is a mindless husk. And so he ends up confronting Lady Shadowbane in her home, Shadowborn Manor. They have this big epic fight. He kills her. Ravenloft jumps in, transport the place into Ravenloft. So Epibane's stuck in this sword in Shadowborn Manor. He's infuriated that he can't leave. And to make the matters even worse, the ghost of Lady Shadowborn is still in Shadowborn Manor and trying to thwart him and his motives. And he wants to finally get rid of her once and for all. And that was detailed in Dark Lords. And this is basically a plot of him to try to pull one of her ancestors or relatives into Ravenloft and to try to take him over so he can leave, finally destroy her and leave Ravenloft. And it's written by William W. Connors, and you can tell some of it is uneven, but it is a good book and one I recommend. And the Epiban, the portrayal of him is cool. And I think William Connors actually wrote Shadowborn Manor and Epiban in the Dark Lord supplement. So he's very familiar with Shadowborn and Epiban. And what he's doing is just progressing the story of that. And yeah, it's a good book. Not the greatest, but it's good. And especially if you like Shadowborn and stuff and Epiban. Next is the sequel to Istrahad, and this is Istrahad: The War Against Azelin by P. and Elrod. I don't think this one got a hardcover treatment, but it's for more than a century. Strahd von Zarovich has ruled Barovia with an iron hand, feeding on the blood of his vassals and fearing no one. In all the years of his tortured rule, none have dared defy him. But now the Vistanti have returned to Barovia, bringing with them a warning for the Dreadlord of Barovia. One is coming to oppose Strahd, an opponent who may not only bring the existence of the vampire to an end, but may destroy all of Barovia as well. Now, Istrahad ended basically with Strahd becoming a vampire, being the Lord of Barovia, and it being the only domain in Ravenloft. Well, Istrahad kind of picks up a little bit after that, and it starts going over how new domains are starting to form around Barovia, and when Azelin comes in Barovia, and Strahad's, kind of challenged a little bit by this powerful guy, but him and Azelin kind of forge an uneasy alliance. Azelin's going to look to, because Strahad wants to break free, so he thinks Azelin may be powerful enough to get him out of there and stuff like that. So they do all kinds of things. They work together a little bit, but Azelin can't stand it. And it describes Ravenloft 2, the house on Griffin Hill, a little bit. And then it just basically describes Azelin when he leaves. And the book, up until then, is really good. The part where the book kind of disappoints is when Azelin's the lord of his own domain. He's left, and he has all these Karragate spies and little people going into Barovia to disrupt things, and they get into a little mini skirmish war. It's not really a war. There's no big grand war between armies or anything in this, and that's where it's kind of misleading and kind of disappointing. However, if you're a fan of Ravenloft, if you're a fan of Istrahad, it's good. It's not as good as the first book. Again, we have that problem. Most people won't think it's as good as the first book. It has excerpts. It connects King of the Dead and Istrahad, and then this. They all kind of connect, and it's very well done in that aspect. Like I said, the whole 2/3 of the book is really good, but then the part where Azelin and Strahd supposedly get in this war, which is not really war, is kind of where it falters. So don't think there's this big grand epic war between the two that happens, and there's not. It's not like that. But however, it is still a good book. I highly recommend it, especially if you like the first one. If you like King of the Dead, if you like the conflict between Strahd and Azelin, and showing the history early of Ravenloft and the interaction between the two guys and stuff like that, then this is another very good book. I highly recommend it. Next up Spectre of the Black Rose by James Lauder and Veronica Whitney Robinson. A sequel to Night of the Black Rose. And let's have a look-see here. It says, in this chilling sequel to the best-selling Night of the Black Rose, factions vie for control of Sithicus as Lord Soth, Dark Lord and former knight of the Dragonlance world, fights to keep his reign from crumbling. Even as he struggles to defeat his enemies, rumor reaches him that the White Rose haunts the land. Has Kitara finally returned to Soth, or is this another specter from the Death Knight's tragic past? This book is basically the means to get Lord Soth out of Ravenloft and put him back into Dragonlance. Dragonlance, the original Dragonlance authors, Weiss and Hickman, had recently come back to Dragonlance after being really away for a long time, and they were starting up a brand new series of novels that they write. Now, Dragonlance had many novels that they didn't write, but yeah, most of those things were terrible and didn't really feel any good vibe with Krynn, and they had changed Krynn, the world of Krynn, which Dragonlance is set in, and when the authors left, and it's really kind of gone to crap. Well, they came back to start a brand new series of novels and revive the Dragonlance, and they wanted Lord Soth back. So this is a way to get Lord Soth out of Ravenloft, and that's basically what happens. He finally somehow gets free of Ravenloft and ends up back in Dragonlance because he's back in Dragonlance novels. It says it's a good follow-up to Night of the Black Rose. Again, as a sequel, though, I don't think it's as good as Night of the Black Rose. It's got too many unnecessary plot points going on. It basically has the Bloody Cobbler, the White Rose, all figures from his past that the realm is doing things to torture him, and Azazel's getting crazier, meaner. They kill off a main character, which I don't want to spoil it for you in case you read it. They kill off the main character, which I thought was unnecessary, and it's not Lord Soth, obviously. And so basically, just remember that this is the way to get Soth back into Dragonlance. And yeah, I mean, it's all right. It's not bad. It's a good book. But I don't think it's as good as the first one. Okay. There was another book, though. To Sleep with Evil, I think. That came out around this time. I can't remember if I did it last episode, but I totally skipped it because it had nothing to do with anything known in Ravenloft. So what was the point of it? And yeah, I can't really review that. So it was at this time, and the internet was around now, that, well, I'll get into that in a second, that TSR announced they were going bankrupt, and that Ravenloft they were canceling many campaign settings and really only coming out with having 1 or 2 campaign settings, and they were seriously cutting back on the products they were releasing every month or every year now, and Ravenloft was one of the ones to get the axe. I remember reading that on the web and being devastated by it. I was really, I just can't tell you, man, I was really heartbroken and devastating, especially when stuff like Carnival was coming out around that time. It was just bad. I mean, I don't know what to say. Several things, like I mentioned before, the comic book industry was going through a similar situation at that point in time. Marvel, especially Marvel Comics, and the bubble had burst, and they were going through bankruptcy, and they were having to cut back, and that hurt me a lot too, because I was into comics, but for Ravenloft to be just abruptly cut like that, when there was so much more, you can see where they were going, and so much more plot lines that could happen, really broke my heart. I mean, it just really devastated me, and I was so upset and so disappointed. And I remember reading that on the web and was just ugh. But as a thank you, there was an adventure module written by the guy who wrote the original Hour of the Knife, and it was the sequel to Hour of the Knife called Shadow of the Knife. It was supposed to be released, but it never was. So that Ravenloft had a lot of websites, good websites for fans because it was a beloved product. But Secrets of the Caractane, or however you pronounce it, was the main one. And so, authors of Ravenloft products would go on there on the forums and constantly, talk with fans, tease about what would be upcoming. There were reviews, all kinds of source material, fan stuff. Well, he released the unpublished version of Shadow of the Knife in a good format. It's professionally done. It just doesn't have covers like this. The art in it is good. The maps in it are good. The adventure is excellent. And so it can be considered part of Ravenloft canon, which I think it really is when we get to the 3rd edition. It is considered Ravenloft canon when we get to the 3rd edition. And basically what it is Soto the Doppelganger it's been several years. He's got to do that Jack the Ripper blood ride again, where he's got to kill so many people with that knife. But this time he's chosen differently because of the mistakes the last time. He don't want to make them again. So he's got Emil Bolenbach to create like a golem that can go and kill people with that knife, and then he can, and once all the people have been killed, like Jack the Ripper style, he can get the knife and use it to gain the power that keeps him alive and basically invulnerable for 13 years. However, now that Timur has melded with his domain, and the Hive Queen and her ilk are underneath the cities, living in the sewers and stuff, things are getting really, really, really desperate and bad, and he's having to deal with that because she wants to come up and end up taking over the city. So he's got to fight her off. He's got to deal with basically doppelgangers kind of like switching sides a little bit and doing their own thing. And of course, Emil Bolenbach's creation went crazy. The heroes are put right in the middle of it. There's a lot going on. It is free. You can still download it. On the Fraternity of Shadows website, you can download it. It is a great adventure. It is a true sequel to Hour of the Knife, and it is considered canon. So, it would have been released. The only problem was TSR went bankrupt and couldn't make any more Ravenloft products, or didn't make any, so it was not released. Alright, so that ends up being my part 3. Next one, the Ravenloft Rebirth. I hope you enjoy.